The U.S. Supreme Court has played a pivotal role in shaping the nation's laws and defining the rights of its citizens. Over the years, landmark cases have altered the course of history, affecting everything from civil rights to the power of the government. Here are 10 of the most influential U.S. Supreme Court cases that have had a lasting impact on American society. 1. Marbury v. Madison, 1803. Marbury v. Madison is one of the most significant cases in U.S. legal history, as it established the principle of judicial review. The Supreme Court ruled that it had the authority to review acts of Congress and determine whether they were constitutional. This decision, delivered by Chief Justice John Marshall, solidified the judiciary's role in interpreting the Constitution and ensured that no branch of government could exceed its constitutional bounds. 2. Brown v. Board of Education, 1954. In Brown v. Board of Education, the Supreme Court struck down the doctrine of separate but equal, established in Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896, declaring that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. This landmark decision was a major victory in the civil rights movement, leading to the desegregation of schools across America and setting a precedent for challenging segregation in other areas of life. 3. Roe v. Wade, 1973. Roe v. Wade was a pivotal decision in which the Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide. By ruling that a woman's right to privacy included the right to terminate a pregnancy, the court recognized the importance of reproductive rights and set a precedent for future rulings on privacy and bodily autonomy. The case continues to be a central point of debate in American politics and law. 4. Miranda v. Arizona, 1966. Miranda v. Arizona is one of the most well-known Supreme Court cases in U.S. criminal law. The court ruled that individuals must be informed of their rights when arrested, including the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. This ruling, known as the Miranda warning, has had a lasting impact on law enforcement practices and the rights of individuals in custody. 5. Obergefell v. Hodges, 2015. Obergefell v. Hodges was a historic case that legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. The Supreme Court ruled that state bans on same-sex marriage were unconstitutional, affirming that the right to marry is guaranteed to all Americans, regardless of gender. This decision was a major victory for LGBTQ+ rights and equality in the U.S. 6. Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896. While Brown v. Board of Education overturned this ruling, Plessy v. Ferguson remains one of the most infamous Supreme Court cases. The court upheld racial segregation under the doctrine of separate but equal, allowing segregation to persist in many areas of American life, particularly in the South. This case institutionalized racial segregation for decades until it was finally overturned by later rulings. 7. Gideon v. Wainwright, 1963. Gideon v. Wainwright was a landmark case in which the Supreme Court ruled that the right to legal counsel is guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment, even for those who cannot afford an attorney. This decision expanded the rights of defendants in criminal cases and ensured that everyone, regardless of financial means, would have access to legal representation in criminal trials. 8. Citizens United v. FEC, 2010. In Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission, the Supreme Court ruled that corporations and unions could spend unlimited amounts of money to influence elections, asserting that political spending is a form of free speech protected by the First Amendment. The decision has been highly controversial, as critics argue it gives disproportionate influence to wealthy individuals and organizations in the political process. 9. United States v. Nixon, 1974. United States v. Nixon was a crucial case in the Watergate scandal. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled that President Richard Nixon had to comply with a subpoena and hand over taped conversations related to the scandal. The decision affirmed the principle that not even the president is above the law, leading to Nixon's resignation and reaffirming the separation of powers in the U.S. government. 10. Loving v. Virginia, 1967. Loving v. Virginia was a landmark case in which the Supreme Court struck down state bans on interracial marriage. The court ruled that such bans violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. This ruling was a major step forward in the fight for civil rights, affirming the right of individuals to marry regardless of race. These 10 U.S. Supreme Court cases have shaped the legal and social landscape of the United States, influencing everything from civil rights to the power of government institutions. Each decision has had a profound impact on the nation's laws, individual rights, and the direction of American society, making them foundational moments in the ongoing development of the U.S. legal system. The influence of these cases continues to be felt today, as they serve as key references in legal debates and decisions across the country.